on, girl, let's scream.
I am a god.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel. This is the part where you run.
Come on, scream.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Scream, a podcast where we dive into our favorite horror movies. I'm Parker.
And I'm Stevie.
And today we are looking at 1980's The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Join us as we journey to the Overlook Hotel and learn all about shining. Are you ready to shine?
Come on, girl. Let's
shine. So let's get into it.
I love this movie.
Oh, it's a masterpiece.
I love everything about this movie.
It's a classic.
I love Shelley Duvall.
Hi, I'm Shelley Duvall.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
She's great in this. Jack Nicholson is fantastic in this.
Yeah.
He gives like one of the most unhinged performances ever.
Yes.
And the little kid who plays Danny
It's good.
is like, I think, the creepiest kid in a horror movie ever.
Yeah.
I think Danny like takes the award for creepiest kid for
He's
sure.
really good.
So, oh, by the way, we're on the road. We forgot to mention that. That's why we sound like we're in a car. It's because we are. So sorry that the audio doesn't sound great this week, but we did this last time we went to go see Mariah. We are going to see Madonna.
Queen of Pop.
The Queen of Pop. So we thought we should do that again. That was fun when we did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there's similar parallels from that movie to this one because this movie has so much like analysis done on it.
Yeah.
And so many theories have come from this movie. And it was directed by Stanley Kubrick, who is notoriously meticulous. And every single shot and every single frame and every detail in this movie was done for a reason.
Yes.
So a lot of people come up with all their different theories.
This movie has so many fucking theories.
I wrote down a couple just to kind of throw at you before we get into it. But some of these theories include addiction and substance abuse, genocide of the Native American people, the Holocaust,
Yes.
racism in general, critique on American society and the family unit, and
White guilt.
Yeah, white guilt, and child abuse and SA are all theories that are thrown around when we talk about The Shining. And there's so many more too. I feel like almost every day a new like film theory video gets posted to YouTube about The Shining with some new like thing about it.
Interpretation. That's the thing. There's a lot of...
It's a lot of like, y'all are reaching, I think. Yeah.
People need to be stretching before they're going to reach the way they are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Some people are doing yoga because that was a reach. Because with this movie, I think you strip all of those theories away. You get a really simple, good, tight story about a family who gets cabin fever. They're stuck in this hotel and they go crazy. Yeah. Especially the dad, Jack.
Yep.
Played by Jack Nicholson, who is like one of, I think, the most iconic actors. And this is one of the most iconic performances in a scary movie.
I am convinced, and I'm pretty sure I saw it. I may be lying, but I'm pretty sure I saw it in a fun fact video. But I'm pretty sure they bleached his eyebrows in a way to where he always looks angry. Because there was one shot I was looking at his eyebrows, and I was like, the ends of those brows are like white.
Yeah, his eyebrows are pointy as fuck.
They are so... He always looks angry.
You could take someone's eyes out with those eyebrows.
I don't know. They're always very severely arched, and he looks angry.
Yeah. And this was based on a book by Stephen King. This is our first movie of the pod that was a Stephen King book first. And Stephen King did not like this movie when it came out. Mainly he was just kind of butthurt, I think, that they changed shit.
A lot of it.
They changed a lot of it. But I think the changes that they made for a better movie. And Stephen King was like, oh, well, I'm going to make my own version of The Shining. And he did a mini-series in the 90s.
It was bad.
And it was bad. Like, really bad. Because some of the shit that is in the Stephen King book doesn't translate well to a movie, and it just kind of ended up being corny.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie, I've always said about The Shining was, is it the scariest horror movie? No, but it is the creepiest, for sure.
Yeah.
It, like,
it makes you feel unsettled the entire time.
Yeah, every, like, decision made with, like, the framing of the camera and the music, the score, and the sound effects and everything.
The set
makes
design,
you feel
the setup of the
so
hotel.
on edge. Yeah, and there's, like, weird things.
The hotel setup makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to actually walk it. And there's also shots where, like, they'll enter a room, and then when they exit it, everything around, like, is completely different.
Yeah. Like, just impossible, like, architecture going on.
Like, there's also, like, one shot, like, where he's, like, riding his tricycle, and then all of a sudden he's on the second floor.
Yeah.
Like, he's on the first floor, he makes a turn, and then somehow he's on the second floor. Which you could attribute to, like, ghost or whatever, or haunting. But it's, like, it's just, if you pay attention, you're like, how does this make any sense, this setup?
Yeah. So it unsettles you naturally, just watching. So, yeah, I would say, if you've never seen The Shining before, go watch The Shining. It is a great classic scary movie. Great performances.
There's, like, multiple versions.
It will creep you the fuck out. Oh, yeah, there are multiple versions, different cuts, because we were talking about, there's a scene, which we'll get into, but there's a scene that, when I was taking notes for the pod, watching it, I was, like, waiting for that scene, and I was like, oh, it didn't happen. I guess it's not in this cut that I was watching.
Yeah. The European cut had, like, 23 minutes taken out of it. So you might have watched that one.
Maybe I watched that, yeah.
I don't know.
Because I make the outlines for the pod. Hopefully it didn't change the viewing experience that much.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll just have to be better about that. Oops.
Yeah, oops. Whoopsies. But yeah.
We'll get into it.
At this point, we are going to go ahead and hop into the spoilers for The Shining. So, if you have never seen it, pause this podcast, go watch The Shining.
Right now.
And come back and get into it with us. All right. The Shining. We open on the iconic shot of the car driving up the hill in the mountains. We're in Colorado.
His yellow bug.
He has a little yellow Volkswagen.
Which is controversial because I guess in the book it's red.
And Stephen King was mad about that.
Yeah.
Stephen King
But
was
don't worry,
so
there
mad.
is a red bug in this later.
And we hear the score, The Shining, the dun 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 dun, and then we see the Overlook Hotel looking very foreboding in the background as it kind of overlooks literally this big winding hill that leads up to it.
Yeah, gorgeous place.
Very, very cool hotel, interesting design. The theme, like the decor, is very Native American.
Yeah.
Which, keep that in mind. We will get into that. We meet our main character, Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson. And he is checking into the hotel for a job interview. And he goes and he checks in with them. Then we cut back to Jack's apartment and we quickly meet his family first. He has a wife named Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall. And he has a son named Danny. And Wendy asks Danny, are you excited to go to the hotel? And Danny says, Tony's not excited.
Uh-oh.
And this is the first time we learn about
Tony.
And Tony is... It's first like maybe established that Tony is Danny's imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And every time that Tony talks, Danny kind of goes into this like nasally voice.
Yeah.
And he uses his like index finger
To like imitate
talking, like kind of a puppet. And she says, well, why don't you want to go, Tony? And he says, I just don't want to.
Okay. Fair enough.
So then we go back to the interview. And...
Right, okay, so this is already a scene where, like, the hotel doesn't make sense. Because when he goes into the interviewer's office, there's a window where a window could not be.
Yeah.
Like, based off of like how the like
Yeah, like
when he's walking in.
Yeah, when you walk in, you see that there should be like more of the interior of the hotel, but for whatever reason, there's like a window that overlooks like a courtyard.
Yeah.
Outside with trees and shit, which doesn't make any sense. They're already giving subtle hints that
Something's not right.
something's off about the hotel. Yeah. And we meet the owner of the hotel. His name is Mr. Ullman. And there's also like, I think the springtime or the summertime caretaker is there as well to like assist with the interview. And I just noted that all three of these men have such 70s ass haircuts.
Yeah.
Long,
Yes.
just shaggy hair.
Yes.
I feel like lots of hairspray too. The owner of the hotel, he had so much hairspray in his hair. That hair was crispy and crunchy. And he's offering Jack the position to be the winter caretaker.
Because they close from like the end of October through May because the snow gets so bad it's just pretty much impossible to keep the roads clear because it's 25 miles of road. So they're like, we just can't guarantee that people would be able to safely come and leave.
So they need someone to stay and kind of like keep the boiler on and kind of maintain the inside of the building while these huge snowstorms go on during the winter. And he says it's a pretty easy job, but the trickiest part of the job is that you do feel this overwhelming sense of isolation because you're snowed in. And Jack's like, oh, that's fine with me. I'm actually hoping to get some writing done. And Jack kind of has this like, oh, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, they like ask him what his... I was watching this with Keaton and they like asked him what his job is. They're like, oh, you're a teacher. He's like, I'm a writer. And I was like, just say unemployed.
Right.
Dude, just say unemployed.
Well, I guess in the book, he lost his teaching job because he like hit one of the kids or something. He had like a temper tantrum or something. And Jack definitely has anger issues, which we will get into.
Yeah.
But in this scene, he is cool, calm, and collected. He has this like that kind of fake like job interview smile, like, oh, this job's perfect for me, kind of thing. And the owner says, okay, well, that's good, but I do need to give you another disclaimer. So, here's the tea.
About 10 years ago.
There was this guy named Charles Grady. Charles Grady was the winter caretaker, and he was living in the hotel with his wife and two daughters. And he went crazy, okay? He went fucking cuckoo bananas.
And he murdered them with an axe.
Yeah, and then he shot himself. And Jack does not see this as a red flag.
Yeah, he's like, oh, okay.
He's again just like, sounds good to me. Like, okay, whatever.
Oh, okay, well, yeah.
Take the job.
Oh, they're dead? Okay, cool.
And we see back at Jack's house, we see Danny again. Danny is like in the bathroom. He's brushing his teeth, I think. Mm-hmm. And he's talking to Tony again. And he says, Tony, do you think that Dad's going to get the job? And he goes into the Tony voice and he says, he already got the job. He's going to call Wendy about it in a few minutes to tell her about it. Mm-hmm. And then we do see that the phone rings and Jack calls Wendy and tells her that he got the job.
Yeah.
Which is our first hint at maybe some psychic
shit's going on.
Shit is happening. And Danny is looking in the mirror and he's talking to Tony and he says, Tony, why don't you want to go to the hotel? And Tony shows Danny a vision of the hotel elevator in the lobby opening up and a river of blood pours out.
Ugh.
And we also get a quick flash of the Shining Twins, the iconic twins.
They're not twins.
They're not twins?
No, one's 10, one's 8.
Oh, they look like twins to me. Well, in pop culture, they're the twins. That's kind of what we've...
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's one of those, like, Mandela effect things that we call them the Shining Twins, but I guess they're not.
Yeah, because I thought, like, rewatching it, I was like, oh, they're twins. So then it was like, they're 10 and 8. And I was like, oh, okay.
I guess one is a little taller.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're just dressed the same.
Bitch, I'm gonna call them the twins, bitch.
That's fine.
Because they're creepy ass. They're, you know those twins, and one of my besties, Viv, is a twin, but twins kind of creep me out when they dress the same.
My partner's a twin.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, Keen's a twin. I'm like, why do y'all have to fucking dress the same? And then y'all, like, back at elementary school, and, like, they get mad when I wouldn't know which one's which, and I'm like, bitch, y'all literally dress the same, just one of y'all wears purple and one of y'all wears pink. I don't like it.
You're very heated about that.
I don't know why I'm so mad about twins.
Don't come back to my house later.
I know.
Don't want Keaton to make you mad.
Well, I live with a twin. What am I going to do?
God.
But, anywho, we see Danny kind of goes into shock, and his mouth gapes open really wide. Then we cut to this doctor lady is examining Danny, because he apparently passed out after he had this vision.
Yeah.
And Danny says that he was talking to Tony when he passed out. And the doctor starts asking questions about Tony. And he explains that Tony is the little boy that lives in my mouth. And she says, well, can I talk to Tony now? And he goes, no, Tony's hiding. She says, well, where does Tony hide? And he says, in my stomach. And she says, has Tony ever asked you to do things? And Danny, like, takes a pause, and then he goes, I don't want to talk about Tony anymore. And something about Tony as, like, a concept creeps me the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like, and we kind of never really get an explanation for
Tony.
what Tony is.
Yeah.
But I don't like Tony. Tony gives me weird vibes. I'm like, what is this, like, psychic entity doing talking to this little kid? Like, I don't know. But the doctor and Wendy go out and they leave Danny to get some rest. The doctor's basically like, I'm sure Danny's fine. But then she starts asking Wendy about Tony. And she says, when did he start talking to Tony? Like, when did this imaginary friend start to be a thing? And Wendy spills some tea. We get a little backstory about their family. She says there was an accident a few years ago.
Yeah.
She says that Jack was drinking and he came home hours late in a very bad mood, and Danny had scattered some of his papers around, and that pissed Jack off, and Jack went to grab him up and he yanked his arm really hard and he dislocated Danny's arm.
Yeah.
And the whole time that Wendy says this, she's like keeping it together with a smile.
But she's like, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
and I feel like this scene kind
like,
of explains why she acts the way she does in parts of the film.
Yeah.
She kind of acts very much like, oh no, everything's fine, everything's okay, everything's good. And very like, almost like very forced in scenes. And it's usually only scenes that whenever she's talking about Jack or Jack is in. Any other time she's
trying
like
to hold
chill.
together, but right below the surface, she is like on the verge of a fucking mental breakdown.
Like, you know, she's like,
because
you can tell the relationship is you can tell the relationship's abusive, and then he has like an alcohol dependency.
Yeah. And she's trying her best to be convincing that everything's fine, but the doctor looks concerned.
You're like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, you might want to run.
But Wendy's like, oh, but everything's fine because that whole accident was actually the catalyst for Jack to become sober. He hasn't had a drink in 5 months. So then we jump to the family. They are driving up the mountains into the hotel.
In their yellow bug.
And their yellow bug. Not red. Not red, Stephen King.
Sorry.
Stay mad. Host, stay mad. And
it was supposed to be red.
That's why I hated The Shining. Like, apparently he likes it now. Apparently he thinks it's a good movie now. He's come around to it.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they're driving up the mountains, going to the hotel, and Wendy is, like, asking if this is the area where the Donner Party happened. And Danny asks what that is, and Jack tells him the story of the settlers who had to resort to cannibalism in order to survive. And Wendy's like, Jack, we shouldn't tell Danny that story. And Danny's like, well, I already learned all about that from the TV. And Jack's like,
all about cannibalism.
Yeah. And Jack's like, see, he learned it from the television. Which, this was kind of like a commentary on, around this era is when TV was starting to become more and more a thing.
Yeah.
And parents were worried about, like, their children being exposed to things that they shouldn't be at.
Yeah.
Kind of that loss of innocence at an early age. Which is, I think...
Real.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, especially today.
And I think it plays into some of the themes of The Shining. Some of that, like, the family dynamic and Danny's innocence. And, you know, he, by the end of this movie, definitely loses some of his innocence.
Yeah.
But they drive up to the hotel, and they check in, and Jack is waiting in the lobby, and he is reading a Playgirl magazine.
Yeah.
So, like, he must be fruity. At least a little bit fruity. Because if you don't know what Playgirl is, it's like the reverse of Playboy. So instead of, like, nude pictures of women, it's nude pictures of men. So, yeah. Fruity. Definitely fruity.
A little bit fruity.
Fruity.
A little bit more tooty, a little bit more fruity, baby. A little more fruity, baby. Woo!
Are you feeling a little more tooty or a little more fruity?
A little more tooty, baby. Shut up.
Shut up.
Shut up. And the owner and the hotel manager takes them on a tour through the hotel. And first he shows them their room, which is like a little townhouse suite. Then he shows them this giant hedge maze, which is in the front of the hotel. And,
Which is not in the book.
Yeah, which is not in the book. Stephen King, in his book, had hedge animals that came to life. And I watched a little bit of the miniseries, and that was, like, so hokey pokey to watch. Like, it actually be translated to screen. That shit was not scary at all. So, like, I understand why they converted it into this hedge maze. Because what they do with the hedge maze is actually really scary. Like,
yes.
When we get to it later.
Great.
And this is when we learned that the hotel was built on an Indian burial ground. He says that actually when they were building the hotel, that they had to fight off attacks by the local Native Americans who were like, don't fucking build a hotel on our, like, dead ancestors.
Yeah.
Like, so that will come into play. I think that's a huge theme of this movie, is
because
disrespecting the dead.
Wendy also points out, like, the stained glass is, like, Native American inspired.
Yeah, and lots of decor. There's a lot of Native American influence in the architecture of the hotel, which is, like, kind of fucked up, right? That, like, these people built a hotel on the ancestors of this group of people, and then they designed the hotel to almost be, like, appropriative of
Native American.
This group of people. Yeah. He also shows them the Snowcat, which is kind of like a snowmobile, which is stored out in the garage. And he says that this is kind of the only way you're going to be able to get around when the snow starts to really build up.
Yeah.
Danny is inside while they're taking the tour. He's in the game room and he's playing darts. And he turns around and we see the twins. And they just kind of like, they look at Danny and then they kind of glance at each other. And they kind of, the one kind of smirks and the other one kind of like smirks back. Kind of like in telepathy, they kind of told each other, like, oh, we just gagged him.
Two dumb bitches saying exactly
it's
to
always
each other.
Two dumb bitches saying exactly.
Like, that's literally who they are. It's like they're just giving that look. It's like, you know, when you're having a conversation with a friend, or like you're hanging out with friends and somebody just says something dumb and you all just kind of like give that look.
That look.
Where you're like, I'm not gonna say anything, we're just gonna give a look.
Yeah, like the one, she kind of like looked at her and she's like, oh, we just gagged his ass, sis. And they kind of like just creepily walk away. And Danny's like, what the fuck? And then back at the tour, the owner shows them the gold room, which is like a ballroom. And he notes that the bar, of course, will not be stocked up because, you know, it'll be the winter. We're not going to have any booze. And Jack says, oh, it's okay because we don't drink. And they introduce them to the head cook of the hotel, Mr. Dick Halloran. And Danny, at this point, joins them. And Dick takes Wendy and Danny into the kitchen and gives them a tour of this, like, big industrial-sized kitchen. And he shows them, like, they have a bunch of, like, meat in the freezer.
And this is the same, where when they go in the meat locker, what's around them is different when they exit.
Oh.
Like, it's completely different, like, exterior.
Like, the hotel just keeps switching up, basically.
Yeah. Furniture will be moved around.
And I never noticed that shit, like, the first time I watched this movie. But, like, you know, you really do start to realize that, like, once you, like, someone points it out to you, you're like, oh, the hotel really does switch up a lot. Like, that's just, it's crazy. Yeah. And it really, like, messes with your mind when you're watching it. Again, just, like, unsettling, creepy shit. And while he's giving them a tour of the kitchen, Dick keeps calling Danny Doc, which is a nickname that Wendy has for him. And she wonders how he could have guessed that Doc was Danny's nickname. And he just kind of brushes it off.
Like, oh, I heard you say it.
And she's like, oh, I don't think I said it. And he's like, oh, well.
No, you did.
He looks like a Doc anyway. Yeah, whatever. And in this moment, Danny starts to go into kind of like a trance. And Dick is like continuing to talk to Wendy, but telepathically, Dick starts talking to Danny.
He's like, you want some ice cream?
Yeah, he says, how would you like some ice cream, Doc? And this is our first instance of The Shining.
The Shining.
This is Shining. So, then we get one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think it is, like, it just gives me chills. Something about this scene. And apparently they, like, shot it a bunch of times because that's what Kubrick did. He would do, like, hundreds of takes.
And they would get so exhausted. You can really tell at the end how exhausted Shelley is because the bags and the circles around her eyes are like fucking wild.
He just wanted to like really get like as much as he could out of his actors, even if like they got it right on the third or fourth take.
He also wanted a bunch to work with.
Yeah,
he wanted as much to work with as possible.
But this scene unsettles me. It's the rest of the adults they go and check out the basement, and it's Mr. Halloran and Danny. He gets Danny some ice cream, like he said he would when he shined to him.
Chocolate.
Yeah, he likes chocolate ice cream.
Which is a good choice. Why wouldn't you?
And this is when Dick explains to Danny about Shining. He says that his grandma and him could have whole conversations without even opening our mouths, and that his grandma called it shining. And he said, I thought that I was the only one who could shine. I thought it was just me and my grandma. But he says, I could tell right away that you could shine. And Danny, he asked Danny about Danny's like abilities, and Danny says, Tony doesn't want me to talk about that. And Dick says, like, who's Tony? And he's like, Tony's the one that tells me things. And he says, does Tony show you things? And Danny's like, yes, but then I go to sleep and I forget what he showed me. And then he says, Mr. Halloran, are you scared of this hotel? Is there something bad here?
He's like, no.
And his face, like, he's like, why would you say that? Like, of course not. The hotel's fine. Then he says, okay, so Danny, like, you know when something happens, it can leave a trace of itself behind. Kind of like
burnt toast.
Yes, when you burn toast. It can leave a trace that only people who shine can see. It's just like pictures in a book. Let's just say that not everything that's happened in this hotel was good. Let's just leave it at that. And then Danny says, what about room 237? And just the kind of like forebodingness of like this kid like pulling that number out of like nowhere, and you could see like in Dick's face like, oh, he really went there, you know, like it's, I don't know, it's to me like really effectively creepy, and it's the reason why I love this scene.
Yeah,
because as soon as he mentions that name, you're like, oh bitch, I gotta know what the fuck is in room 237.
Yeah.
And the whole movie you're like, it's like a build up to like, oh yeah. And he says, you're scared of room 237, aren't you? And Dick says, no, I ain't. But he is. He definitely is.
Yeah.
And Danny says, what happened in that room? And Dick says, nothing. Nothing happened in that room, so you need to stay out of that room. Yeah. Just very chilling scene. And then it ends, we get a smash cut to a title card that says 1 month later. We see Wendy bringing Jack breakfast in bed, and they talk about how nice it's been living at the hotel so far. And Jack is like, you know, it's weird, like from the moment that I first came for my interview here, it's like I've been here before.
He has like serious deja vu.
Yeah, he's like, I know people talk about having deja vu, but this was like crazy. Yeah. It's like he knew it was going to be around every corner. We see that Jack has set up his typewriter in the lobby. But instead of writing, he's bouncing a tennis ball back and forth.
Yeah, he's like throwing it at the wall.
Against the wall. Apparently he just has like some writer's block, and so he's trying to brainstorm some ideas. Wendy and Danny decide to go and explore the hedge maze, which is by the way, I don't think we really talked about like the scope of the hedge maze.
It's huge.
Ginormous. Probably like
I think they say it's like 12 feet or 13 feet tall in the movie.
I think so. And it's like just massive. And it's like, because you see they have like a little miniature model of it in the lobby, and it's a very intricate maze, like would be so confusing to navigate.
Yeah. The trick for a maze though, you always go left.
Oh really?
Yep. Because then you'll eventually make it out.
Fun fact, I never knew that.
You just always stay there. Or like you can always just stay to a wall and you just follow that wall.
Interesting. And we get this cool shot of Jack in the lobby. He's looking over the miniature maze, and it's like looking down on it. And
then we get a really cool shot, and we see Wendy and Danny walking in the maze.
Yeah, and it kind of cross dissolves into this overhead shot of the actual maze, and like they're walking through it. And I wrote that nothing happens in this scene really, but the score is at like a 10.
Yeah.
And you can tell Kubrick just wanted this movie to just like put you on edge, even when nothing is happening. You feel unsettled.
The whole movie makes you feel so unsettled.
Because like the music is just like blasting, and the sound effects are really creepy during this scene. And Wendy is watching the TV, and we see a news report indicating that there is a massive winter storm approaching. Then we get this really iconic shot of Danny riding around on his tricycle. And this movie is famous for innovating the Steadicam technology. So basically, like, they figured out this like rig to where your characters can be moving around and the camera can follow them really smoothly. So like this kid we see it from the like kind of the back of him as he's riding on his tricycle, but the camera is just like really smoothly tracking him as he's weaving in and out through the hotel. And this is when he is riding past a room, and then he stops really abruptly and he turns around, and we see that it is room number 237. And he kind of just like stares at it warily, and then he kind of gets up and he starts to approach the door, but it's locked.
Yep. Woof. Thank God.
Dodged a bullet there, right? So he gets back on his tricycle.
Also, fun fact, in the book it's room 217.
Interesting.
There were two rumors I saw. I don't know which one's true. Either the hotel did not have a room 217, so they're like, okay, or they used 237 because the hotel didn't want them using 217 because they thought it would make people afraid to check in to that room.
Oh, like the hotel where they filmed this?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So that night, Jack is typing away very diligently at his typewriter, and Wendy comes into the lobby to check on him, and this breaks his concentration.
Quote unquote concentration.
Right. Then he proceeds to bitch her the fuck out.
He gets so mad at her.
This is our first real look at what the real Jack is like.
Yeah.
Jack is a horrible asshole to his poor wife.
Yeah.
Just berates her, demeans her, and then he says, "Now get the fuck out," with the most like shitty passive-aggressive grin ever. And you feel so bad for Wendy because she was so excited to come in and like check on her husband and, you know, see what he's up to.
She sort of see how he was doing.
And he just breaks her spirit. And she kind of like leaves defeated. And the next day, it starts to snow. And Wendy and Danny are outside playing in the snow. And we see Jack is watching from the window. And this is an iconic shot. His face just looks like, oh, fuck me. Like looking out onto the snow and knowing what he's going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And he also looks, you know, like a little possessed. You can tell that, like, the hotel's starting to get to him.
The cabin fever is happening.
Yeah. It's a great, like, reaction gif. Like, it's definitely a meme, but it's also very chilling. Like, out of context, it's a great meme. In context, very scary. And Jack Nicholson just has that scary-ass face.
Yeah.
He's got those pointy-ass eyebrows. And I would not want to encounter him in a dark room, you know?
Not at all.
So then we see Wendy. She is noticing that the phone lines are out, and she uses the radio to connect to the local police station. They suggest that she keeps the radio on at all times in case there is an emergency. And she kind of has a fun time, like, being on the radio and getting to say, like, over, you know, like, over now, using that lingo. And you can tell that this poor woman is just dying for contact from the outside world.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we get another shot of Danny riding the tricycle, and this is the iconic scene of the twins in the hallway. He, like, turns a corner, and the twins are standing there. And they go, "Come play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever." And we see flashes of their dead corpses,
all bloodied
from getting hacked up with an axe, because these were Mr. Grady's kids that he killed. And Danny gets really spooked and he covers his eyes, and when he uncovers them, the twins are gone. Danny goes to visit Jack alone in their suite. And this scene really unsettles me, and this is the scene that, like, I think is the most theorized about, because I would say, like, the biggest, like, hidden message or what people think that Kubrick was trying to hint at was that Danny is being essayed by Jack, which is super gross, because Jack, like, has, like, you can tell, like, Danny is really nervous around his dad. He does not want to be alone with him, and, like, Jack has him come and sit on his lap, and he, like, is cradling Danny's head and, like, kind of kissing on his head, and Danny has this, like, 30-yard stare the whole time. And I can definitely tell, like, just from this scene alone, why there are so many theories as to, like, this probably being their dynamic. And again, that kind of calls back to Jack when he's reading The Playgirl. Like, there's a lot of different, like, hints at, like, Jack's kind of sexual deviance throughout this. But this scene to me is the most, like, telling, because that poor little boy just looks, like, so uncomfortable. And Jack says he wants to stay in the hotel forever and ever and ever. And he says it just like the twins said it, so Danny's freaked the fuck out.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And Danny says, "You would never do anything to hurt Mommy or me, would you?" And Jack says, "No. Why, did your mom say something to you?" And Danny's like, "No, Dad." And Jack says, "I love you more than anything in the world, Danny. would never do anything to hurt you. But the way he says it, I'm not convinced. I would not be convinced if I was this little kid. Then we get a scene of Danny playing with some toy cars on the carpet. And a tennis ball rolls up to him from off screen.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. And it's the same tennis ball that Jack was tossing in the lobby. Danny looks up and he realizes that the tennis ball rolled out from room 237 and the door is ajar. And he walks in and it's like, oh no, don't fucking do it. Don't do it, bitch.
Don't go in room 237.
But we don't see anything yet. It just cuts to Jack laying at his desk and he is screaming like, ah, ah, ah. And Wendy runs in and wakes him up and he says, I had the most horrible dream. I killed you and Danny with an axe and I chopped you up into little pieces.
It's like, okay, you didn't have to share. You could just said you had a nightmare.
Right. In this very moment, Danny walks into the lobby and he is sucking his thumb and he looks traumatized and he has huge bruise marks across his neck.
And his sweater and his shirt are
his
ripped.
Sweater's ripped open, yeah. And Wendy kind of puts two and two together and is like,
oh my god, Jack did this.
Yeah, she's like, you did this.
I don't
She
blame her.
starts pointing at Jack and she picks up Danny and she like carries him away.
Yeah.
And Jack can just do nothing but stare blankly as this happens. Then we get this scene of Jack walking down the hallway into the ballroom, and every time he passes a mirror, he like kind of spazzes out, like shakes away, like because he's just can't stand to look at his own reflection. And he enters the ballroom, and he approaches the empty bar, and he's kind of like talking to himself, like, I'd give my goddamn soul for a glass of beer. And when he looks up, he says, oh, hi, Lloyd. And then we see that not only is like the bar fully stocked now, but there is a bartender sitting there.
Okay.
And this is Lloyd.
This is the service I want. This is some top-notch customer service.
Lloyd is the world's best bartender, according to Jack.
Yeah.
He says, you were always my favorite one, Lloyd. I always liked you. And Lloyd is like kind of creepy. How would you describe Lloyd? He's got like that center part kind of.
Yeah, just an old like bartender.
He kind of looks like from Charlie's Angels, the Thin Man.
Yeah.
Kind of vibes. Thin Man from Charlie's Angels. Yeah, he pours Jack a glass, and Jack starts to kind of vent to Lloyd about his problems, and he says, never heard him, you know? I wouldn't touch one hair on his goddamn little head. I love the little son of a bitch. But that bitch, as long as I live, she'll never let me forget what happened. Okay, I did hurt him once, but it was an accident. And it was 3 years ago, for God's sakes. And he just kind of like is feeling sorry for himself, making excuses. And Jack Nicholson just gives a masterclass in Unhinged.
Yes.
Perhaps the most unhinged like performance I've ever seen, to be honest.
Oh, it's so good.
And then right at this moment, Wendy runs in. Lloyd and the open bar like disappear. And she tells Jack that there is a crazy woman in the hotel who tried to strangle Danny. Jack goes, are you out of your fucking mind? And she's like, no, it's true. Danny told me. He went into a room and he encountered this crazy woman. And Jack says, which room? But I think we know which room it is. 237. Then we cut to Dick Halloran. He is at home in bed, chilling. He has posters of naked hot chicks all over his room, which I thought was funny.
Florida.
Yeah, he lives in Florida. And he starts to go into a trance that kind of makes him shake and tear up. And then we see flashes of Danny foaming at the mouth and shaking. And we realize, oh, Danny is shining to Dick to try to get him to see what's going on at the hotel.
Yeah.
And we also see visions of room 237. Then we see Jack go into room 237. And he goes into the bathroom of room 237. And it's that iconic shot of, we see like there's a bathtub and there's a shower
It's
curtain.
like a green bathroom.
Yeah, green bathroom. The whole room is like green and purple.
Yeah.
And there's a woman appears in the bathtub, and she slowly like draws open the shower curtain and gets out of the bathtub.
And she is, first of all, coochie out.
Oh, full beaver.
Full on beaver out. Her bush is out. She doesn't give a shit.
Tits to the wind, bush to the wind, completely naked. And she's a very young, very like stereotypically beautiful woman.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And Jack kind of gets turned on. He starts making out with this bitch. But then he sees in the reflection that her body's all like decomposed and rotten.
And old.
And old, yeah. And then he like pulls away from her, and we actually see that she's this old hag. And she cackles. She's like, ah, ha, 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 ha. Ah, ha, 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 ha.
She's like rotted.
And
like,
yeah, she's nasty. And it freaks Jack the fuck out, and he runs away.
And we kind of get flashes of her both like in the bathtub. Like it almost gives the illusion as if she was drowned in the bathtub.
Yeah.
We don't really
know. Or I was wondering if maybe when Danny went into that's like how he found her. Like
yeah.
he found her like chilling in the bathtub. I don't know. We don't know. Or also, I was even thinking, because the tennis ball that rolled out of the room was the same tennis ball that Jack was playing with. What if Jack really did do that to Danny, and it was just Jack that encountered Danny in room 237?
Yeah, we don't know.
I don't know.
We just don't know.
Because Jack could have been abusing Danny and all of that, so I don't know. But that's what's cool about this movie, is it leaves things open for interpretation. Yeah. So Jack goes back to their suite, and he tells Wendy there was nobody in room 237. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I think he made it up.
And Wendy's like, well, yeah, what do you think happened? And he's like, he did that to himself. And Wendy says, well, we need to get Danny out of here. And Jack does not want to hear that. He's like, it is so fucking typical for you to make up some excuse when I finally got something going for me, when I'm really into my work. Which is really funny, because if you've noticed this whole movie, Jack hasn't done shit. Like, he has completely disregarded all of his responsibilities and has just been like fucking around in the lobby.
Yeah. And
Wendy's been the one having to like do all the maintenance work.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. I had never noticed that until this time around. But I was like, what do you mean your duties? Like, you haven't been doing shit. You've just been sitting around on your ass the whole time. And then he says, I have let you fuck up my life so far, but I am not gonna let you fuck this up. And he storms out. And Jack goes downstairs in a rage, but he notices that there are balloons and party favors decorating the hallway that leads into the Gold Bar. And we also hear like 1920s like jazz speakeasy music.
I can't think of, whenever I hear Gold Bar, all I can think of is Drag Race.
Yeah. Jack joined Wendy in the Gold Bar.
I don't fucking like you.
You're a fake ass bitch. I don't fucking like you. And you shouldn't even be here.
You're a fake ass bitch. I don't like you, and you shouldn't even be here.
That was literally Jack to Wendy in the last scene. He visits Lloyd again. Oh, well, first of all, he sees that the Gold Bar is like filled with all these like 1920s bitches.
Yeah.
Like all these flappers and like swankified like men in tuxedos, and they're all like boozing and having a few laughs. It reminded me of the movie Chicago.
Yeah.
It's all like those kind of bitches like hanging out. And he goes and he visits Lloyd at the bar again, and he orders another drink. He tries to pay for this drink, but Lloyd says, oh, your money's no good here, sir. It's on the house. And this is when a waiter comes by with a tray full of drinks, and he accidentally bumps into Jack and spills some drinks on Jack.
Yeah.
And it's this British guy, and he's like, oh, here, sir, let me help you tidy up in the bathroom. And they go to the bathroom. And this is where we learn that this man...
Well, first of all, the bathroom, red as fuck.
Yeah, it's a very red bathroom.
Like, so red.
All the, like, stalls are red, and it's...
Also, the bathroom makes no sense with how the gold room's set up. But...
Yep. Which, again, the hotel being weird, switching up. Well, we learned that this is Grady. This is the man who killed his family.
Yeah.
He was the original caretaker. And Jack recognizes him and is like, weren't you the caretaker before? Like, didn't you go crazy and kill your family with an axe? And Mr. Grady is like, no, Mr. Torrance, you are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know. I've always been here. And Jack's face is like shook when he says that. And Grady is creepy as fuck. Like, whoever this actor is, he sold it because he is so unsettling. He spills some tea too. He lets Jack know that Danny has been shining to Dick Halloran to get Dick to come save him. And he calls him the N-word too.
Which was like
hard R, which shocked me. I
did not remember that.
It's crazy that like there was a time when like movies like use this word. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I guess it was just to show his racism.
Well, yeah, definitely, because racism is definitely a theme of this like whole thing, and like again, like the hotel being built upon like the Native American burial ground. Just, I'm pretty sure that Jack says something about like white man's burden or something, like talking about white guilt or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like racism, classism, it all kind of comes to play in this movie a little bit. But I was still kind of like shook to hear like the N-word in a movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then he says something like, back in the day when my kids were acting out of line, I corrected them. And he says,
the girls tried to light the hotel on fire.
Yeah, that's when we learned that the twins were trying to light the hotel on fire because they knew, they could sense that it was evil. And he's like, I corrected them. And when my wife had something to say about it, I corrected her. And he's basically like, I think you should go and correct your family too, Jack. And so Jack kind of gets inspired to go and correct his own family.
Yeah.
So this is when Jack goes and he disables the radio.
Yeah.
He says, no one's going to fucking get here. No one's going to have contact here. But meanwhile, we see that Dick has booked a plane and he is going to travel to the Overlook to save Danny.
Yeah.
Then we get another iconic scene. We see Wendy armed with a baseball bat. She is looking for Jack, and she goes into the lobby and she stumbles upon his desk, and she finds his written work that he has been typing away at this whole time. Stevie, what has Jack been writing?
All work and no play makes Jack a
dull boy.
Just written over and over.
again.
Do you think her initial thought was, this motherfucker?
Yeah! I think at first she's like, this is what the fuck she's writing? And then she goes through and she finds the big stack of pages.
And that's all it says.
And then she freaks out because just the implication that like, oh my God, like he's going crazy.
And he's not doing anything also. He's not working.
And he hasn't been working. He hasn't been writing. I've been doing all the fucking work around here. And he's just been sitting here going crazy, writing the same sentence over and over again. Like, what the fuck? And she really starts to freak out. This is really when Wendy starts to fall apart. And of course, guess who is right there witnessing this whole freak out?
It's Jack.
He approaches her very menacingly. He's taunting her. He's like, let me guess,
what
you want to talk about Danny, don't you? What do you think should happen? Yeah, and and I love Shelley Duvall's performance. A lot of people talk shit on Shelley Duvall. I think she won like a Razzie for this.
They took it back.
Good.
They apologized. They were like,
as they should, because I think she does a great job of selling like a woman who is just unraveling. Like, she is
clearly already in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And is a little unsettled from that.
And he treats her like fucking shit and demeans her and makes her feel like she has no power. And so like all she can kind of do is like kind of stumble backwards with this bat and swing at him to kind of keep her away from him. That he backs her up the stairs. And she continues to kind of swing, and she's crying.
He's like, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
When he gets a little too close,
she smacks him. Boink.
She boinks him in the head, and she sends him falling back down the stairs.
Yep.
And then she drags his ass into the fucking like pantry.
Yep.
Dry goods storage room that locks from the inside.
Yep.
She locks his ass in. He starts screaming at her to let him out. He even tries to like guilt trip her, like,
oh,
you hurt me real bad. Let me out so we can get me to a doctor. But she doesn't fall for it.
She's like, no, I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. And she tells him, she's like, I'm gonna take Danny and we're gonna get the fuck out of here. And he says, well, you've got a real big surprise coming for you. You're not going anywhere. He says, go check the snow cat. She goes out to the garage and she finds that he had like basically destroyed the engine of the snowmobile, so she can't leave. Jack is passed out back in that locked closet, and he is awakened by a knock. And this is when we hear the voice of Grady. And Grady says, I see you've hardly taken care of the business we've discussed, Mr. Torrance. And Jack is basically like, don't rub it in, like, I'll deal with it. And Grady's like, oh, is that so? Are you sure that you're really gonna, commit to this shit and kill your fucking family? And Jack says, I give you my word. Just give me one more chance. And this is when we hear the door unlock. Which I like that we don't see the ghost unlock the door. We don't know, like... Because this movie is interesting because the way that all the ghosts are shot... It could just be him hallucinating. Yeah. We don't know if there's actually ghosts. He could also have The Shining. He could also have The Shining. Yeah, that's true.
There's so much.
So, again, it's implied that the ghosts unlocked the door, but maybe he just managed to get out on his own, and there are no ghosts.
Well, there's also, like, in some shots, there's 2 doors to this pantry.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so it's like there's also like, well, maybe he just went out the other
found the other door,
or there's so much you just don't really.
Yeah.
You don't really know in those films.
And then we see Dick Halloran. He has rented a snowmobile and he is making his way up to the hotel in the blizzard.
Yes.
Back in their suite, this is when Danny creeps me the fuck out because he is in full Tony mode, and he's going red rum.
Red rum.
Red rum. And he takes some lipstick and writes red rum on the door. And he really starts screaming. He's like, red rum, red rum, red rum. And he wakes up Wendy, and she sees in the reflection of the mirror what red rum really is spelled backwards.
Murder!
Murder! And right in that moment, we hear a bang. And this is the iconic shot, which this shot gets over-referenced so many fucking times. It's that where the camera tracks Jack as he's swinging the axe and he's breaking down the door. But I have noticed this, especially like lately, the past like 4 or 5 years in horror movies. Everyone wants to fucking recreate the shot of the camera tracking the axe as it's swinging back and forth. The last movie I saw in was X. I believe that Jenna Ortega's character got an axe and she started to like chop her way out of a door that she was trapped in, and the camera did the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jack starts to chop down the door, and Wendy takes Danny and she locks them in the bathroom. And there's a very narrow, tiny window above the toilet, and they're able to get it open, and she's able to get Danny out the window, and he kind of there's like a big long snowbank, and he slides down it to safety. But Wendy is too big. She cannot get through this little window. So she's stuck as Jack starts to chop down the door to the bathroom. Yeah, he pokes his little head out, and we get the iconic "Here's Johnny," which apparently was improvised by Jack Nicholson.
Here's Johnny.
And then he starts to like try and open the door from the other side, and she takes her knife and she slices his hand. And then that's when
we hear
Mr. Halloran,
the snowmobile, like approaches.
Yeah, approaches in his snowmobile. And this is when Jack decides to like change his plan, basically.
Yeah, I gotta get rid of him.
Gotta go take care of him first. And so he leaves Wendy by herself in the bathroom, and he goes down, and we see Dick enters the hotel, and he's looking around calling out for anybody. And this is a great jump scare, one of my favorite jump scares. Yeah. Jack, he pops out of the corner, and
from behind a pillar.
Yeah, from like a pillar, and he axes Dick in the chest.
Right in the heart.
Right in the heart. Which is sad, because this character was a really sweet character.
Yeah.
And, you know, in any other movie, he would have been like the savior to help get these people to safety. But unfortunately, yeah, Jack did take him down. Diva down.
Diva down.
Diva down. And because Dick and Danny had this psychic connection, Danny sees Dick's death in like real time and causes Danny to like scream, and that kind of gives away his hiding spot, because Danny has been hiding in this like cupboard thing. And so Jack starts to chase Danny, and Jack is really scary in this scene. This is the iconic, like, he's limping around with his axe, swinging it around all scary, and he starts pursuing Danny. Then we cut back to Wendy, who has left the bathroom. She has her knife, and she's running around all frantic. And this is when she stumbles upon, there's this open hotel room, and there's a man getting head by this, like, furry guy in a bear costume.
Yeah.
And I guess this is supposed to be an allegory to the creepy, gross dynamic between Jack and Danny.
Yeah.
Like, Danny is supposed to be like the bear costume guy. Jack is supposed to be like the gentleman who's receiving.
Yeah.
Right. Which that freaks out Wendy. I guess at this part too, this is when she stumbles upon the room where all the skeletons are. Yeah. The skeleton room. The skeleton room was not in my cut of the movie. That's the scene that I was like, oh, I wonder when the skeletons come out. But they're not in the cut that I watched, I guess. So I looked that scene up on YouTube. It's like all these, different skeletons just chilling.
Skeletons?
They're just like,
I like how you say skeletons.
Yeah. I think I said that in the Texas Chainsaw.
Skeletons?
I don't know why I called them. Oh, because of Jack Skellington. I've always just kind of called them skeletons. And the Texas Chainsaw episode, I think I called that the bone room. I called it the skeleton room, too.
Jack Skellington room.
Yeah. Then this is when Jack starts chasing Danny out into the hedge maze. And then we cut back to Wendy. She discovers Dick's body and freaks out. And then she gets jump scared by the ghost of some random British guy who's got blood all over his face. And he just goes,
quite a party.
Yeah. Isn't this nice? Aw. And then she screams and she starts running away some more. We cut back to the maze, and Jack continues to pursue Danny through the maze, but Danny gets really smart.
And so he starts retracing his steps, by walking backwards,
so that he can basically
create a circle.
Yeah, with his footprints to confuse Jack and kind of get him off his trail. Then we see Wendy back in the lobby. She turns around and the elevator door opens, and this is when she sees the river of blood pouring out. Then we go back to the maze again, and this is when we see Jack start to get really confused by Danny's trick.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Danny manages to escape the maze. He kind of goes back out the front way.
Yeah. And
Jack just continues to descend into the maze and descend further into madness and just get really lost.
Yeah. And then Danny and Wendy are reunited.
Mm-hmm. And they get into
the
Dick's snowcat and drive away. Because we're going to see Madonna, I wrote a Madonna joke. Are you ready?
Yeah.
If they were a Madonna song, they'd be Die Another Day.
I guess they'll die another day.
And then we see Jack continue to stumble around inside the maze, screaming inaudibly.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to the next morning, and Jack is frozen solid and dead as fuck. And if he were a Madonna song, he'd be Frozen. And then we we see the lobby of the hotel again. There's a bunch of old pictures from the year that it opened in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle, there's this picture of the gold room with all of the 1920s bitches hanging out in it.
And it zooms in.
And guess who is in the front of this picture just having a laugh? Jack.
Motherfucking Jack.
And it's basically he really has been here the whole time. I don't know. Weird. It's creepy. Whatever that's trying to imply is creepy.
Well, Kubrick has said that was supposed to be reincarnation, a reference to reincarnation, because Grady was the caretaker 10 years before, but how was he around in the 20s? And it's because Grady was also reincarnated. Like, that's allegedly what the,
Oh, okay. So I did notice, so that's interesting, because I noticed that when the owner of the hotel is doing the interview, he says that guy's name is Charles Grady. But then when we see the ghost later and he's talking, he introduces himself as Delbert Grady.
Yeah.
So I guess he was reincarnated.
Yep.
Whoa, that's interesting. So yeah, Danny and Wendy, they made it out. Jack did not make it out, and he will forever be a part of the hotel.
Well, until they remove his body.
But spiritually.
Oh, yeah, yes, you're right. And isn't there a sequel?
Yes, it's called Dr. Sleep, and I liked it. I mean, it's not like...
Is it the same
It doesn't hold
kid?
a candle. It's, so no, it's, Ewan McGregor plays the adult version of Danny.
Okay.
There's the villain, she's a vampire. She has a coven of vampires. And they feed on kids who can shine. So instead of drinking blood, they track down kids that have a psychic ability and they murder them and like suck their energy out. There's pretty some scary stuff in that movie. I really liked it, but obviously doesn't hold a candle to this one. But I think they did a great job with the story that Stephen King wrote as the sequel to The Shining. They did a good job adapting it to a movie, I think. But yeah, so that's The Shining. I think overall, such a chilling, creepy movie. It's so effective in the way that it unsettles you, and it will forever be a classic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just love this movie. I love Shelley Duvall. She did great in this movie. And
yes. Oh, and we got to talk about everyone thinks that she was like
traumatized in this film, and she was not.
Yeah, there's like this whole narrative that Stanley Kubrick like abused her on the set of this movie, but like that since has been debunked. Yeah, even Shelley herself was like, no.
Like, it was hard. The conditions are hard, but like,
yeah, because we do
said
so
it was
many
an experience. She wouldn't like change. Like, she wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah.
So, and she's supposed to be making a comeback to horror and acting.
Oh, really? Good for her. I know she's had her ups and downs.
She's amazing.
But I love Shelley Duvall. Hi, I'm Shelley
Hello.
Duvall.
I'm Shelley Duvall.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
All right.
So next week on the pod, I'm so excited because we are doing probably my favorite, or at least if not one of my favorite horror movies. Should we say it? Should we
Jennifer's
announce it?
Body.
Jennifer's Body. Yeah. Because next week is Valentine's Day. When this episode, well, not next week because we record these pods a few weeks in advance. But when that one airs, it will be Valentine's Day. And I thought that for whatever, I think it's because she wears that jacket that has hearts on it. I think that's
it's
the
a Valentine's movie for you.
Yeah, for me it's like a Valentine's Day movie. Well, and
it's romantic.
Her and Needy kind of have like they kind of have a little thing going.
It's romantic. It's my favorite rom-com.
Yeah, it is kind of a rom-com a little bit with like a horror twist. So yeah, super excited for that. Stay tuned. And thank you so much for joining us today on Let's Scream. We hope you had fun with us at the Overlook Hotel. Ooh. Please remember to follow the pod, like the pod, and leave a glowing review of the pod, of course. Y'all should be subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. And you can send us movie requests for future episodes. Maybe we will do a movie that is your favorite. You can follow me at Parker_Will_C on Instagram. And you can stream my music on all the streaming platforms.
And you can follow me at Stevie Nash 95 on Instagram.
Until next time, this has been
Let's Scream. Bye.